Welcome, Susan. A bunch of things printing on the side here, so forgive the noise in the background. How are you? And could you remind me again? I know you've been on our webinars before. Your name sounds familiar, but can you tell me where you're growing from and what brings you to this space and time? And welcome, Denise. Just one more page. So welcome, Susan and Denise. Since we're at the top of the hour, top of the half hour. I'm gonna go ahead and start. But oh, there you are, Denise. Tell me, where are you growing from, and how did you find us? Why are you interested in growing food in small spaces? Oh, you're in mute.
Okay, hi. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm in Knoxville, Virginia.
Yes.
And I heard about you. I went to your class with for Andy Hickman's
Art of Workflow. Yes.
Yeah. So we just bought a house similar to your story. But we lived. I'm married. My husband and I have been married for, what are we in? 2023, 7.5 years.
Wow.
And we have three kids, 3 born children. And then the first time we moved out of my mom's house, we rented a townhouse, and it had this, little patch of land, not too different from what is in your power or in your anyway, what you showed in your pictures.
Yes.
And but I had never, I couldn't keep anything alive ever. And so it was 2020 when we moved over there, and then everything shut down. And so I thought, well, I guess we're gonna start gardening. I guess we're gonna do something. And so started gardening, and we didn't have a ton, but we started some things that are not too difficult. And then the biggest happiness was when we did sweet potatoes, and the vines just went everywhere and everything. And then
that's so good.
Yeah,
and you did a big harvest. Hope so. Here, and Susan here, welcome from Las Vegas. 8B, need help placing plants that need full sun elsewhere. Not sure if they need afternoon shade in the high desert. Hoping to also find out what edible plants grow well in shade, as half of your yard gets 3 hours. I remember that question that you sent in. So I do have a little bit on shade gardens as well. So let me just switch over to my slides and start the show. And let me see here. Go back to the very, very end. So welcome. My name is Nikki. I'm absolutely thrilled that you two are here. And if you have a yearning to grow and grow abundantly, even if you've grown food in the past, successfully or not successfully, especially if you have a small space, a small yard, and a shade yard, we know about that. So we're here to help you out. I'm a mom of 6. I'm a certified permaculture garden designer, co-founder of Permaculture Gardens. And in 2017, my husband and I won an award at the Green Festivals, the last Green Festivals. And the award was for helping families grow their food through this app that we were making, and we continue to make through this program called GIY. And so I'm going to tell you about GIY later, but first, the reasons that have brought us here today are really compelling. Denise, you just started on it. And I'd love for you to elaborate even more. We grow food because of health. Our kids were born with allergies, our first 2 kids, and they were failure to thrive. We knew there was something wrong with the food system, so we had to change the way we were eating. But then the grocery bills kept on getting higher and higher. And then we also are growing because of spiritual reasons, that we find a lot of peace and calm and joy, and just seeing how God is in the garden for us is an everyday challenge and an everyday adventure. And then also to augment the finances. And we continue to do this too, because we are now 6 kids, and in a bigger place, but the grocery prices have risen, as this is taken a while back. But I feel like this is number one thing that we need to grow: blueberries, berries in Virginia, in Las Vegas. And here it's fine that we grow, and then we can pay, okay, it's worth like $1 more for the expensive organic food that we grow, if we knew that this was totally the most nutrient dense food that we could ever buy. But the fact is, and this is from UC Davis, 100% of vitamin C in spinach, for instance, is lost after a week of refrigeration. And this is just spinach. They did a whole other range of vegetables. And by the time they get to us, these plants are nutrient deficient, and they're not enough to keep us full for the amount of time that we should. Like they say, in our grandparents' generation, it now takes 8 oranges to fulfill the requirements of 1 orange in our grandparents' generation that it did before, because of the lack of nutrient density of foods, because of the shipment, the time it takes to arrive to our house, to our groceries. But this is a garden fact: you can grow $700 worth of food in a tiny place, in something as small as 10 by 10 square foot plot. Do you guys have this 10 by 10 square feet right now? Yes. Well, that's good, because then you can grow even more, probably. Yes. You can grow 50 pounds, or what did I say? 50 pounds in a 4x4 garden bed, 1 pound of produce. So roughly $6, $300 per season. Now, if you multiply that by 4, because we believe in growing year round, you can grow a lot more than you can imagine in a smaller amount of space than you can ever imagine. And I'm not the only one who's saying this. There are other people. We've just proven it with our own little situation, but we've been learning from a lot of people about how a lot of other farmers to do the same thing. So I asked this of you earlier. Denise, you were just getting at, you had moved to a new place, and now why do you want to grow? What compels you to grow right now?
Basically the same things that you said, as well as I don't know, the way things are going. I don't know, like with everything shutting down in 2020, it's like, I don't know if something like that happens again, and then we're stuck with just what we have in our garden. Then it's just up to us. We're also Catholic, and so I don't know, just a lot of stuff is just being.
Yeah, I think that I was just somebody from church just sent me a video of how these white Russian immigrants went to, I'm from the Philippines. So she sent me a video of and she's Slavic. So of how these white Russians migrated, because it was the only refuge that they could find, into the Philippines. And then how they set up camp, and how they were so ingenious to create like a whole little community where everybody's thriving. There was food, everybody knew how to harvest things. And I thought, wow, I wonder if we could get away with doing this. If push comes to shove, yes, but it would be even more successful had we had their background of farming. And so this is why we do what we do, is to be able to empower everybody to grow their own food, no matter where they live, no matter what situations befall us. So in this hour, I'm going to do a little brief intro to permaculture and what that means. Susan, I live in a desert with severe drought. Food security is my primary goal, but I also enjoy gardening and want a sustainable, regenerative pollinator garden that would satisfy my need for beauty and serenity. Yes, absolutely. So I have a big heart for the deserts in the States. We did a cross-country trip in 2019 because a lot of our clients are all over the States. And we tried to look at the places. We have clients in Utah, in Arizona, one of our best gardeners in Arizona. No one in Las Vegas, although I think I had one in Las Vegas. No, I have never had a gardener client in Las Vegas, but I am familiar with it. And the thing that compelled us to employ permaculture was a video, and you can Google this, Susan, called Greening the Desert, where it was permaculture, which is I'm going to go into, was used to terraform basically the deserts of Jordan into an oasis that was productive. And so it can happen in Las Vegas. And I hope that you will take this, what you learned today, and keep on experimenting and inspiring others to do the same where you are. We're going to talk about 3 steps to becoming a lazy gardener. And if you don't mind muting yourself, Denise, for just a moment, no worries. We're going to talk about our Grow It Yourself community, and then we'll have Q&A, and then I have award the winner and bonus template. If you stay till the end, you get this garden plans template. But I also have a song that I embed in when I teach. And if you can guess it, I'll give you a packet of seeds, like bonus seeds, because I'm giving away a lot of seeds tonight. So let's see. These are pictures from a gardener who is one of our clients. And in one small backyard, she was able to grow microgreens, fig trees, kale, and calendula. And here's another, so this is possible for you guys. So focus, ask questions, and here we go. Permaculture is a design system for ecological and sustainable living that integrates plants, animals, buildings, peoples, and communities. So some people say it's a design science. It's a very holistic way of looking at your garden instead of just looking at it and thinking, here's a little patch. I'm going to, it's like a kidney shape, patch. How am I going to attack it? Always looking at the bigger picture. And so one of the ways that I can explain it best is by showing you what a linear system is. And is anybody familiar with Annie Leonard's story of stuff? The story of stuff, no. So you can YouTube that as well. It's and Susan, let me see, no, okay. It is the story of how a toy, for instance, something that's taken from China, let's say a little toy car, is extracted. Usually we'll use fossil fuels to create that toy. We'll use the fossil fuels to ship it to the different places around the world, like the big box marts. And then we purchase them and consume them. And then they stay in our homes for an average of 6 months before we dispose of them. So these are man-made systems that move in one direction from extraction to disposal. Permaculture is not like that. Permaculture is a cyclical system. It helps us design permanent systems for persistent human existence. An example of this is the cyclical system of waste. It's not just when you compost, for instance, you aren't just zero waste, which is like a catch-all, it's kind of a trendy word now, zero waste, which I like. I try to be zero waste. I'm not totally zero waste. It's beyond zero waste. It's a negative waste because you actually take what's waste and put it back into the soil, and it feeds you. And it's the return, like the return of the seasons. Nature shows us that there is a rhythm, a cycle in keeping things in balance. This is what regenerative means. It's whatever you put into that system, it comes back more than ever before. Then you put it back in the system again, the excess, and no waste. There's no waste at all because you put it back into the system that keeps feeding you abundantly. You can do this when you harvest seeds, right? You harvest the seeds, you harvest the seeds, and then you put it plant it. You don't have to buy your seeds. So we're always moving towards this. This is an ideal that we're all striving towards. I don't harvest all my seeds yet, but it's certainly something that I want to do in the future more and more. Now, the 3 steps to lazy gardening, and that's another word for permaculture, is lazy gardening, have to do with learning about your patterns, which I think, Denise, you may be familiar with from my last talk with Andy. Soil, really going in depth, and water. And patterns, they come in different forms. You have physical patterns like the honeybees, finding that their natural patterns, the hexagon is the most efficient way for storing honey. So, and when you think of 2D in your garden and you're trying to maximize space, you're trying to think, I have this flat surface. How can I maximize the planting space here? Take it from the bees and adopt that hexagonal pattern into the way that you transplant your seedlings. And in that way, not only will you be growing when they grow and, to full size, they will be shading out all the weeds underneath. No weeds will be able to penetrate there because it will grow. And then you have a lazy gardening way of less weeding because of that. We do this in our seedling trays. We sow this outside when we transplant. So there are physical patterns, there's seasonal patterns. In ecology, we talk a lot about patterns of succession, where ecological succession is the process of change in the species structure of an ecological community over time. And what does that mean? So let's say you were given a desert. If you let that desert alone and you had the elements that were natural, like the wind and the rain, and the temperatures were favorable, and you didn't erode it or do development on it, build buildings, destroy the soil again, over time, and especially if you dug a ditch, like a little, I'm seeing like a little crevice in there for the water to kind of flow in, over time, that desert would transform itself after lots of years, hundreds of years, from a bed that was dry to a bed that was weedy, because the weeds are actually pioneering species. They're the first to colonize a place. They're the most resilient ones. They're there because they need to give structure to the soil. They bring that soil erosion, they contain soil erosion, or they break up the soil with their very hard roots. It depends on what the weeds, there's books called Weeds and What They Tell Us, because weeds have different functions. So the weeds that know what to do with the soil will come. And then after some time, those weeds will give way to a different rise of type of plants. And the plants will become, from annuals, they will become more and more perennials until you have a forest. And the climax of succession is the forest. The forest you don't have to tend. The forest you don't is the laziest garden of all, because it has its own rhythms and cycles, and so that's a pattern that we can take from, but we accelerate this pattern by design. So it doesn't have to take us 100 years to get here. It can take us maybe a few months. So what do you do to do this? Well, why don't we start with planting the perennials first and getting those trees established? Consider, when you're in a garden, you're looking for a lazy garden, think of your perennial items first in terms of themes this year. Consider what trees you want to put in to anchor your garden. That'll be the highlight and upon which everything revolves. Consider your almonds, your plums, your pears, your palm trees, your date palms. So in the desert, you have a whole range of other trees that you want to consider. You also have pioneering species that you want to consider initially. You may not have them all the time, but you can let them grow. And after this webinar, I will send you, Susan, some links to the Greening the Desert project to just show you how they started. And you won't have the spiky trees forever if you are in a desert, but you might need them initially, the ones that are hardy and that will help retain the water and the moisture and the life in the soil. Non-trees that are perennial are rhubarb, asparagus, strawberries, berries, grapes. Pollinator plants, these are perennials too. Echinacea, lupine. Yes, you have a very small backyard. Well, then consider the smaller things that are in this template, right? Echinacea is a good one. What are we do have a dry lands handout too that I can dig up, but I can't remember since I'm not there all the time off the top of my head what the plants are. But some of these will still work in the dry lands. Milkweed, bee balm, prickly pear. Prickly pear, that's something that you can consider in your backyard. It's edible, deters the deer, and it's also a great perennial. Figs are great potted plants if you are in small spaces, and they will fruit in a pot, but of course they want to be outside. All things want to be outside ultimately. So the bigger the pot, the better, because, and I'll tell you later why, but we have physical patterns, seasonal patterns, behavioral patterns. And here is a companion planting chart. Who's heard of companion planting before? Yes. Do you have any companion plants that you favor, that you know of, that you've used in your garden before? Susan. Yes. So companion plants are one dual way to look at what grows well together. You know, usually we'll say, oh, this should go with that. It's usually A, B. It says bad companions on here. It's onion and garlic, but honestly, I have never found onion and garlic or even fennel to be a bad companion plant. Alyssum with greens. Interesting. Alyssum with greens. Why? Why? Because each alyssum, and there's a reason to the companion planting models, there's something in the draws pollinators. Very good. I love alyssum. And if you can grow that in your yard, that should be one of the first things to put in. Alyssum, yarrow, all those small little pollinator flowers that attract those beneficial insects. Okay. Now, why did I put this in here? Okay, so this is in our garden. Oh yeah, because we teach kids all the time in our schools. I'm now transitioning this for the next 3 months. I'll be teaching in 2 schools. And we teach companion planting, or what we call in permaculture guilds, to the students. Here's a great template for guild: is tomatoes with basil with marigold, and each of these does different things to work well together. One is tomato, of course, is a good food. I would say that would be our star player in this particular guild. It's supported by the basil, which just by chance happens to go well with it in pastas and Italian cuisine, probably because they grew well together in the garden, and then the gardeners were just grabbing them both and making dishes with them. But they're also good companions because basil stops bad fungi. It also has these flowers that are great. This is a great pollinator too, at a different time, or maybe the same time as the marigold, but it has different flowers because it can attract different bugs and different good bugs. And then we have marigolds whose roots exudates. They have root exudates that deter nematodes and do other things as well. They deter nematodes, fungi, and are a great pollinator. And they look pretty, right, and good food. So this is a great example. It's not a permaculture guild creating one is really an art and a science at the same time, because as you get to know your plants, you get to recognize what goes well together the more you grow them. And the other part is the only principle that guides this is having one element do many different things. So one element, several functions. Okay, so when you choose your guild elements, have them have several functions that you like. The more diverse your ecosystem, the more diverse the planting is in your garden, the more stable it becomes. Think on that for a minute. The more diverse your ecosystem, the more stable it becomes. I hope. I'm sorry, Susan. We'll see you later and catch the recording for sure. I'll probably have it ready by tomorrow. Thank you for hopping in. So think on that for a moment. The more diverse your ecosystem, the more stable it becomes. This is true in life because then you have redundancies. If one coworker is out, you have another one. You have a backup teacher, you have a substitute teacher or something of that sort to fill its niche. If something dies, another person can come in and stabilize the system so the system doesn't fall apart. If you have one plant attacked and the other, if you're planting two kinds of melons and one is attacked, but the other seems to be resistant, then you're good. The more diverse your ecosystem, the more stable it becomes. And here's an example of in the school garden, how what is it? The tomato hornworm. So this is a tomato hornworm being attacked by a parasite, the wasps, the eggs of the wasp, the braconid wasps, which are helpful garden wasps, that are attracted by the different things in this garden, this school garden. So the tomatoes were spared. This guy loves eating tomatoes and kills tomatoes. So this tomato plant was spared by the presence of this other, unbeknownst to us, braconid wasp. So I have in the workbook that you guys have a 15-minute garden routine. We are big proponents of, it doesn't have to take a long time to do this gardening thing. But if it helps to have this garden routine streak tracker, here it is for you. You get 7 minutes of observation time. So our friend, we got this idea from Amy Strauss, who's our friend, who's a permaculture gardener and teacher and author. And she would say, out of the 15 minutes, 7 of those 15 minutes have to be just observing your garden for these patterns and figuring out what works, what doesn't, what's attacking what, what does my plant look like? And then you have active work, and then you close with cleanup. So we talked about patterns, and I forgot to sing my song, which is what ties this all in. But here is it. Here it is. Look for patterns all around in trees, circles, spirals in the ground, in trees and waves they can be found. Look for patterns all around. We're up to the next step. Soil is living, keeps on giving. Can you guess the song? No tune spraying, no roto-tilling. So if you can guess the song, you get a prize. Right before this call, maybe half an hour before this call, I got off in the GIY community. We have watch parties where we dig deeper into things that we're learning. And we were learning more about the soil. And this is a little bit more overview, but this is the soil food web. There's an ecosystem below ground that supports the ecosystem above ground. And the giants of this soil food web are the earthworms and the arthropods. Then we go down in size to the nematodes. And are nematodes good or bad? Good. Okay, so a lot of nematodes, they can be bad because they would chomp at the roots of these plants, but they can also be good because they're food for the bad. They're food that eat the bad bacteria, and they're food for that bigger they're food for other things like fungi, actually. And then are fungi good or bad?
I guess it's the same thing. They're good and bad.
Yeah, so contrary to what most commercial fungicides make us believe, fungi are mostly good. Around 90% of land plants are in mutual beneficial relationships with fungi. They keep the bad nematodes in check. They partner with roots of the plants and extend these roots to help the plant absorb more nutrients like phosphorus and potassium and water, and they warn them against the bad fungi. They send signals. So essentially, there are mycorrhizal fungi that partner with most of your annual vegetables, and they're called the internet of the soil because of that signaling that happens underground. The concept of looking at this soil food web like this is fairly new. I would say in the last 15 years, 10 years. But if you look at it this way, that everything is connected, you can't justify the use of pesticide in order to kill one type of fungi, one type of bacteria, one type of bug, because in the process, you will inevitably kill the parts of this well-oiled system and your whole garden will collapse. You may not see it right away, but the results of pesticides are devastating. So in essence, we don't feed the soil, we feed the life in the soil. We don't feed the soil, we feed the life in the soil. But how can you do this? Here's some practical ways. So you can compost, which does take some time to learn, but it can be made in as little as 18 days using something called a hot composting method. You can add the beneficial fungi. There's several different kinds, but the most popular, the most common, easy to find one is mycorrhizal fungi, so that it can help partner with the roots of certain plants and help them grow. You can plant legumes because all legumes are nitrogen givers. They have an association with bacteria called Rhizobium, Frankia, and there are other kinds of bacteria that partner with the legume's roots, and in exchange for starches, starches, they give the plant sugars, and they get to give the plant nitrogen too. And they fix the nitrogen for the plant in order for it, oh, there it is. So here's a peanut. So peanuts are one of our favorite things. Virginia is known for its peanuts because it grows really well here. And you will see that in its roots, it contains nodules of nitrogen fixing bacteria. And so in essence, when you grow anything that's a pea or a bean, it comes with its own fertilizer. So it's one of the easiest things for us to give kids to grow. Like you want a kid to grow something successfully, just give them like a pea or a bean and it'll grow well because it has the nitrogen in capacity within. Also, fertile soil comes naturally. So don't till. I know contrary to a lot, this is really hard. Even I have gardener clients who still have a hard time accepting this. You can, if you're starting your garden for the first time and your rock is super clay and you have to pickaxe it, I mean, that's going to be the first and only time, the one and only time that you're going to till or make the soil break it up, okay? But other than that, once you break up the soil and have those air pockets, you want to introduce the mycorrhizal fungi, the legumes, the plants themselves into that mix of soil with air. And from then on, avoid stepping into the bed, because tilling every year results in what is now Arizona and what is now, the Dust Bowl areas, because they just tilled it over and over again without any consideration to the life in the soil, because they didn't know. Second is don't spray, because chemical sprays kill all the life in the soil, not just the bad bugs or fungi that you're trying to kill. And third is compost. And so in our townhouse, this was a picture from our townhouse. We tried this pallet system. And I think in a townhouse, you need like a bin that's, you have rodent proof, because I mean, I can do this now in the farm and I think it'll be good because you're not so, there are rodents all around there. Voles in our garden right now, and they're probably going to burrow and get into this, but I'll still have compost going here. I have a compost bin inside my house actually that has worms, that has red wriggler worms, and I have a whole other course on composting inside our DIY course and program. There's another way to compost. The third way is to ferment it using bokashi, and this is instead, so you know how you make fermented pickles, or have you ever made those, Denise? No. Well, that process in itself, it's like cooking without the fire. You use anaerobic bacteria, which normally we don't want, but these are good anaerobic bacteria like lactobacilli. In order to digest the food, and make it something that's digestible to even us humans. That's what we do in a jar of fermented veggies. And that's what you do in a composting jar of bokashi, where you seal this tight, there's no air, you cultivate anaerobic beneficial bacteria, and then at the end of a few weeks, you get fermented compost that smells like sauerkraut a little bit. It smells a bit sour, and then you add it to your garden. So just some other things here. So small growing spaces, this is another garden fact, are more productive per acre than commercial agricultural operations. Let's repeat that again. Small growing spaces are more productive per acre than commercial agricultural operations. Your backyard, if it's a small space, is more productive than Driscoll Strawberry Farm. Wow, how can that be? Why do you think this is so?
Maybe because I'm gonna take care of the space, and it's what I'm gonna eat, and so I want to, take care of it. And it's not just like, oh, this is what I do for a living. And
yeah, absolutely. A farm, it's so wide, it's hard to go out there, relax, and then notice things. It's more attended to, like you said. Can you imagine farm managers leisurely, eagerly wanting to come out in the middle of a cornfield and taking tea, observing the growth of their plants up close? Some farmers do that, I feel like, but very rarely. This is our small townhouse. This was our small townhouse backyard, when it was all like dressed up and things, but we still had so much production coming from here, despite the shadiness and despite the fact that it was small, because we were always out here trying to put one more thing inside and one more thing into the guild. So back to the song. Look for patterns all around trees and, oh my goodness, circles, spirals in the ground. In trees and lakes it can be found. Look for patterns all around. Soil is living, keeps on giving. No to spraying, no roto tilling. And then the third is water. Let me see. I can't remember get my lyrics. Oh, here it is. Capture water from the rooftop, making sure that every drop stops, sinks slowly, spreads all over. That is how you deal with water. Have you heard of that song?
I don't know, maybe not. I'm not sure.
Okay, it's okay. So we now are going to do water, and in gardens, we want water to seep into the soil and wallow there for about 12 hours, not more, slowly dripping its way into your plant roots. Why do you think not more than 12 hours?
It doesn't start getting moldy.
Yeah, it doesn't get moldy, and it doesn't harbor the bad bacteria we're talking about that were anaerobic. But there are most of the bacteria in the soil, when it becomes anaerobic, it's not what you want. It starts killing your plants. So this is where I talked about greening the desert for Susan, and this is a desert project in the worst place as that you could find in Jordan, that the government gave to this project. They gave them like the Bedouin lands that were wastelands, and so they took it. And in 2010, this is how it looked like. And 2011, little by little, 3 years, you could see. Now, if you go there, they hold classes. There's a full, housing and everything. And it's just a really rich place to be in right now. But how did they do this? First, they mulched heavily with straw with their palm leaves, and they planted pioneering leguminous plants first. Anything that you could get in the desert that's a nitrogen fixer, go put it in your ground. Compost. They composted in big tubs of basically bathtubs of red regular worms that they were composting, using shade cloth to protect the initial growth of their fledgling plants. They used Oya pots, which are ceramic clay pots where the water passively seeps into the soil, and other passive systems. So you can green the desert using these principles of capturing the water in the surface and letting it stay there for as long as you can. Because what happens in the deserts, and this is for Susan, I'm sure she'll find this to be the case, you get your rain event and then everything washes away. So no, you want to be ready. When you have your rain event, you want to be able to bring that water into your ground and wallow there for a little bit so that it can seep and regenerate the water, the ground. So this is a Kansas backyard. And when Sarah came to us showing us this, I was like, oh, it's a Greening the Desert project. Maybe this will take 3 years. Maybe this will take 3 years for us to like regenerate and grow stuff in. She lives in the middle of monoculture crops. All this farmland around her is irrigated. They're very dry in Kansas. But in 3 months, this is probably 6 months picture, they changed that. She changed that into this, using permaculture, using these design principles. And she just kept on expanding until she graduated from her program. She's like, I'm doing other things now, but she is so blessed. Every year she gets 180. I don't know if I even showed it here. She got like 180 heads of garlic, like enough. She didn't even have to go to the grocery for garlic because she got it all from here. She got the pollinator plants growing, the corn. It was really exciting to work with her. So mulch with straw. Mulching reduces the need to water by 25%. Select a perennial and edible ground cover. The best mulches are the living mulches. The best allies for your garden are the microbes in the soil and the plants themselves, because the plants have this mechanism. We don't know how it works. We don't know the whole picture yet, but they have this way of already controlling their environment, making the pH higher or lower according to what they need, creating new proteins in themselves in order to change the environment around them, or in order to ward off a pest sometimes. But they have to be healthy. So it's a real symbiotic relationship with us too. But we need to put them in there so they can do more of the work than we, trying to force things. So select a perennial and edible ground cover. Strawberries, creeping thyme, oregano are great options. Don't till season after season. Like I said, this is what happens when you till. This is a master gardener run plot, the community garden plot where they lease out these plots every year, and every year they mow them down. And then we had a plot in here, oh my gosh, nothing would grow but weeds, because so much maintenance, because you wouldn't give the soil a chance. Of course the weeds want to grow. They're the ones trying to protect the soil and trying to balance it out and make it better. So this was really hard. We gave this up after a while. Back in our own home, in our townhouse, we mulched with lots of leaves because that was all we have. So use what you have. We mulched with straw. We tried to had a wood chipper. There's our kids, or we'd have our kids rake and bring them into the beds. And the following summer, this is what we got. We got an enormous harvest. This is a zucchini going up our vine, echinacea flowers, blueberry, gummy berries, pawpaw trees, so much diversity, and so much okra, so much plants. So are you excited to make your own? Do you think you have enough to make your own dream garden come true? Oh, hello, baby. Yeah. I hope this has sparked a few ideas on where to start. But start with why. Start with why you want to do this in the first place. There's so many layered reasons why. There's that. I think God put Adam in Eden for a reason. I think that's kind of where we belong still. There's something that harkens back to that. And that there's Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Sorry, we already went through the desert part, but I can replay it a little bit later. We're talking about what would it mean to grow your own food for you after, taking what you've learned. I'll stop for a second. And I know, Denise, thank you. If you can share with me, do you have like top 3 things that you want to share so Susan can catch up, that you think you can implement from what you heard?
So far, so well, I think she was already there for the planting in hexagonal structure, planting perennials, companion planting. And then in general, I don't pay much attention to like the pretty things, like the marigolds is not something that I would ever like put in. But you know, when you said the more diverse your ecosystem, the more stable it becomes. And like shame on me, you know, for not having for like being like, oh, it's pretty, but it, you know, it doesn't feed me, so
Oh
it
my
doesn't
gosh,
matter.
you're totally that way too. Do not even, I'm sorry that you don't know. I'm that way too. And I have to always correct myself that beauty is also one of the things that we're aiming for, because we want to reflect the goodness that is in the garden in all the different ways that people can see it, so that it is attractive. Could be to attract the actual pollinators, to enlist the help of them to pollinate our plants is one. And then Susan, we talked about greening the desert a little bit there, where we talked about planting the leguminous plants first, because we talked about legumes being nitrogen fixers. So the peas and the beans go in first. And here are some kids, this is their first year growing in California, and they grew radishes. This is how big the radishes got in the first time garden. And they didn't even eat radishes. This was a greening the desert example, was Sarah's Kansas garden. And in 6 months, maybe this was 9 months, she got 180 heads, 125, I think, heads of garlic. So an easy win, honestly, is take a garlic clove and put it in the ground, and by August. So if you put it in the ground now, it's not going to be big enough. It'll be biggish, but not as big as these guys. You usually start them in the fall, but they're one of the easiest things to grow, because you just put them in and forget them. Violets, violas, nasturtiums, and lavender. So right there, we were talking about one element, several functions. Nasturtiums are edible. They're also attractive pollinator plants. They also are great ground covers. We're talking a lot about reducing the evaporation in the ground. You want to mulch as heavily as you can in your Las Vegas garden. Mulching it with leaves, yes, mulching it with straw, or mulching it even better with ground cover things such as strawberries, oregano, thyme, creeping thyme, even sedum, even succulents. We can't eat succulents, right? But they're there and they can cover the ground. It's better that the ground is covered than bare, so that they provide a function as well. This is a Wisconsin gardener, her giant. She actually container gardened this. In the end, it's all about the soil. It's all about that life in the soil, bringing the nutrients to the plants to where they should be. So pay attention. We feed the life in the soil. We don't feed the soil, we feed the life in the soil, because the life in the soil and the plants, they do most of the heavy work. When we add nitrogen, potassium, NPK, we are doing nothing to our plant unless there's already the biology that will know what to do to the nitrogen and potassium. First of all, there's enough nitrogen in the air for the plants, so we don't ever have to. That's why soil tests don't even test for nitrogen, because there's always nitrogen. But they still sell the NPK fertilizers, right? There are lots of fertilizer amendments. This is a Colorado gardener, and there it's dry, a high altitude, but cold, right? And see how this is dill, which acts as both a pollinator and an herb, and just confuses the pests, because I told her, don't plant too many cucurbits. Cucurbits are cucumbers, squash, melons, zucchinis, all that family. Don't plant too many of them in one place, because you're going to get all the bugs. And she's like, no, I really want them. So she planted them here, but she totally got a harvest because she totally confused the pest. Here's another cucurbit there. With all the marigolds and all the flowering dill, and so you can see celery, so many things in this backyard. This is Vix. This is her Instagram account. She's in Virginia. Microgreens, peas. She's an artist, so she loves this is ostrich fern, which is edible when young, and it also looks beautiful. This is her pepper. This is a cucamelon, okra, bamboo. She considers all of these her yields. So all of these do have use. So more in a garden grows than the gardener knows. And so here, if you want to learn more about this and see the community that we're growing, please join the GIY community. We have a free 1-month trial for the month of February. And, you know, in order to like combat this grocery price trend, in order to build more community, more relationships with other people around the US, around the world, because we have European gardeners and Canadian, one European, one Canadian gardener, we have built a community inside the GIY community that's always learning. So every Wednesday, like I just said, we just got off a training, like a watch party for an hour. You don't have to be in all of them, but it's like nice to know that you can always hop in and learn a little bit more. We're going to include challenges like the Plant Your Pantry Challenge, where we're going to challenge you to plant something without buying anything for 1 week. And so if you're not sure what you want to grow, yeah, we have this like 5-day challenge called the Plant Your Pantry Challenge inside the community. We send you seeds. I think there's a one-time, we send you seeds one time, and if you need to get organized, that community will be the one is the one that's testing. You won't have, I'm not sure if you can get access to this right away. This is accessible if you're in our premium program, in GIY program. We have a Sage app to remind you what to grow, how much to grow, when to grow. But yeah, if you're willing, if you have 15 minutes in a day to grow your food, if you know that there has to be some alternative to just eating conventionally bought produce from groceries, if you're ready to transform yourself from a mere consumer to a producer, and you want to do your part in changing the world for the better and reversing climate change in your backyard, which, by the way, if all of us were to do, we could draw down carbon by 30% if we grew gardens and household, composting things, household activities will according to Project Drawdown, contribute to 30% of the carbon reduction in the atmosphere. And if you want to nourish your faith through an appreciation of nature, come and join GIY community. So it's $9.99 per month or $99 a year, but we do have a free trial this month. And if you join by tonight, I'll send you an extra packet of seeds from we have a subscription, a seed sampler subscription, where we send out curated seeds to those in the subscription, but we'll send you one as well if you join by tonight. So that's it. What was your main takeaway? Oh, this is the balcony garden of our Hungarian community member, Andrea. I tell you, last year, she said her husband got so sick because she had so sick of eating cucumbers because she had so many cucumbers, but she grows everything, lettuces, radishes. She composts in a tiny little something here. She has a little compost bin, if you can imagine. So, and leave a legacy. So yeah, this is a nice garden quote I like to end with. All the world's problems can be solved in a garden. Yeah, so I'll stop there. What were your main takeaways and how do you think, any questions?
Definitely the composting one.
Yeah.
Oh, first of all, before that, we have an asphalt roof. Do you still catch asphalt roof?
Okay.
Do you still catch and use your water from an asphalt roof?
That is
Like shingles.
yeah, but we wouldn't use it. We would probably run it through a reed bed. Like you would, if you have this, is it connected to a drainage spout, like a gutter, and then it'll fall down, right? Some gardeners don't have gutters. So the gutter, and then it'll drop down somewhere. So where it drops down, if you can make it so it drops into or is funneled into a garden reed bed, like you can make a reed bed of plants to kind of clean up the soil a bit, clean up the water a bit. I know hyacinth is one. There's so many. There are a few rain garden plants. Those are really good in sifting out the debris of the asphalt, which are bigger chunks anyway, and so that the water can go through, but not the actual asphalt, right? And not now, once it's in the ground, so I wouldn't use the water directly to like pour, I guess. I would try to sieve it as much as possible. And then once it's in the ground, if your soil has that biology again, meaning it has the earthworms and the macroarthropods, they will chew and digest what needs to be chewed and digested, and then it'll be good. Over a 3-month period, that water is good. I would still use it because I'm using, especially if you're in the desert and you have that problem, but you can capture the water on your roof, Susan, and channel it into ditches in your drainage ditches or indentations in the soil in your backyard. That would be great for reintroducing water into your landscape, and then life will come from that water.
And then another,
Yeah.
Well, she has a question.
Oh, so I am inspired to try the square foot garden and see what I can do with a 5-10 raised bed, but my first priority is placing fruit trees. Yes, so perennials first. Jujube, moringa, and feijoa. We have grown a feijoa. They're so nice. Moringa too. I have not grown a jujube tree, but moringa in your climate is wonderful. It loves the heat. It's very resilient. It looks like a nitrogen fixer, but I don't think it is. I say it looks like it because most legume plants have these their leaves are like this, and that's how a moringa grows. It's, yeah, I think start with those and then build around those using, cover crops that but yeah, I'm gonna pop anything else. Yes.
Yes. So where can I find more information about the composting?
Oh, so we have it. So right now the composting classes that we offer are in the course. So we have a course that's outside of the community. We do have, I mean, I can send you the link to that after this. All 3 trees like the heat, but do they need, I can also send you a link to an old webinar that I have on composting. Or I think, an old blog. All 3 trees like the heat, but do they need afternoon sun, or they tolerate reflected heat? Yes, they tolerate reflected heat. I'm not sure about jujube, but I'm pretty sure moringa and feijoa tolerate reflected heat. They like the heat. And then if you do find that they dry up, Susan, try that trick that's in the replay of growing them with shade cloth initially as their babies until they get stronger and stronger. And then you can take the shade cloth off. Yeah. Welcome. Yeah. Anything else? No? Okay. I know you guys had shade. Okay. I'm going to add the link to composting blog I have. And I will see you hopefully sometime soon again. Hopefully this won't be the last time. But if you are, yeah, if you are interested, tree collards, yes. Do they need special care? We are growing tree collards too. They just love the heat. They're going to be perennial in your climate. Brassica have a different mycorrhizal fungi. So if you review the video, I talked about mycorrhizal fungi. Tree collards are a brassica. So they have a different fungi that they need to associate with. That's an amendment that you can purchase as well. But the soil, they're heavy feeders. So the soil needs to be really rich and fertile where you grow it. And that's brought about by there's a lot. There's a lot more I can say about soil, but I'm going to stop there. Soil needs to be really rich. Otherwise, it's going to be another hour. Yes. All right. Well, very good. I will chat with you again, and the replay will come tomorrow. And I hope that you're welcome. I hope to see you more intimately in our community soon. All right.
Thank you so much. God bless you, Nikki.
God bless. Bye.